Hello, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the topics of falling off the wagon and falling in unrequited love. So when it comes to falling off the wagon, sometimes there's these periods in your life where you feel like you're driving straight ahead. You're meeting all your goals and your daily routine is so well put together and you really just feel confident in taking those next steps forward. And you really got a good thing going. And then all of a sudden you fall off the wagon and it's like you're down there deep in the mud again. And the wagon's driven off without you and you're trying to chase and catch up to it. So for me, what represents this falling off the wagon is that for the longest time I was really journaling every day, meditating all the time, drawing every day, and uploading to Instagram and YouTube regularly. And I was on the wagon for about a year. And then basically at exactly this year point of since I adopted all these great behaviors that I had been keeping up all this time, I fell off the wagon and I was kind of back to maybe not all my old behaviors, but certainly a few of my old vices and maybe even picking up some new ones. And I felt a lot of guilt at myself for this, of I was doing so well and now I'm doing bad. But I've kind of shifted perspectives on that a little bit and started to think there are periods in your life where certain things are beneficial or even necessary for you. And then there are periods in your life where maybe something else is necessary. And it's just about, we all have these different paths that we have to walk down and lessons that we have to learn. And, sometimes you learn different lessons at different times in your life, and you need to be put in these situations in order to figure things out. So, for example, before I had the streak of being on the wagon for a year, I was doing more of that sort of thing of socializing, going to parties, meeting people. But at that point, it wasn't really good for me because when I was doing this, I was kind of just, getting rather intoxicated and talking to these people, just making small talk. And I wasn't really invested in the conversations. Then I went through this period of a year where I was kind of more in my hermit mode, and I was just in silent contemplation with myself and drawing every day. And then after this year-long period, I re-entered society and I was going to parties again, but this time with a totally fresh perspective of seeing myself as an artist and wanting to connect with other artists and really being curious about where other people are at in their journey and in their artistic career especially. And if I hadn't had that year of kind of hermit mode, I wouldn't be able to make the best out of this time where I'm going back to those maybe old behaviors. And even though I felt a little guilty of it, I wish I was drawing instead of being out here at a party. Occasionally I've had that thought. There's so many bonds, connections, and friendships that I wouldn't have made if I was still, cutting myself off from society. And so I think really you just go through these periods in life, and it's okay that sometimes you're more active in the world and sometimes you're more active in your inner world. And sometimes you need change to really shake things up. So instead of feeling change is kind of a bad thing or this was good for me and now I'm doing something different and now this is going to be bad for me, just think of it like different ways of living in different periods in your life are just going to teach you different lessons. And, being on the wagon or being not on the wagon, you're still on the path. You're still moving forward. All right, and then the second topic that I wanted to talk about today, falling in unrequited love. So love, wow, what a loaded word with so many connotations, and it's really difficult to unpack. What is love? What is romantic love? What is this loving kindness? So I could make a dozen videos on this topic, so I'm really just brushing the surface. But I've kind of been thinking about the topics of unconditional love, unrequited love. Can you love someone who doesn't love you back? And so first I kind of wanted to talk about what I see as love and unconditional love. Firstly, the term unconditional love is almost funny to me because what is love if it had conditions? If love came with this you have to be a certain way or act a certain way or do these things before I'll give you my love, that's not really love. That's kind of terrifying almost and not very healthy. So to me, when I think of love, it's always unconditional. It's always you love someone just for who they are, or not even who they are, but just this kind of Christ-like love, to love as God loves. God loves all his children. And that's kind of how I approach love in some ways, is just really wishing the best for someone, really wanting everything to turn out well for them, and for wishing for their ultimate happiness, success, and that sort of thing. So in that sense, love is unconditional because no matter what someone does or says or, what they look like, that sort of thing, no matter what, you're still sending this love towards them. And so in this sense, I think it also connects to kind of like the Buddhist concept of loving kindness, of like, there is this kind of meditation you can do where you take like prayer beads, and for each bead you think of someone in your life, and this could include like and this is more like New Agey than, I don't know if this is actual Buddhist practice. I read this in some New Agey Buddhist book. But for each bead, you think of a person in your life, and like family, friend, an enemy even. Okay, enemies are very much essential to this. And you wish loving kindness towards them one at a time. And at first I was really challenged by this concept of like really wishing the best for these people who maybe you don't actually like all that much, where it's like, there are times where I almost prayed on their downfall a little bit, but learning to truly wish the best for someone, where it's like, even if they've hurt me in some way, like I really hope that they find that inner peace, and I hope that they get what they want out of life, and I hope they feel fulfilled, and I hope they have people in their life who really love them. And so in this sense, I feel like developing love for me has been less of this like personal investment of like, what can I get out of this person? Which I think is very common in like the context of romantic love, or even in some friendships, of like, I love this person because, I want them to be my husband. And then there's all these things of like, if I give this person my love, then they'll support me financially. Or like, if I give this person my love, they'll stick around, they're never going to leave me. Or like, if I love this person, they'll have to do like, basically just like having expectations of like what they'll do for you. And to me, like, this sort of conditional love is just like not love at all. But in this way, I've also feel like this has challenged my concept of romantic love when it comes to like loving one person. And now I'm not necessarily endorsing polyamory, because I think there are many good like logical, pragmatic arguments for monogamy. But just when it comes to like the feelings of love that you might have towards someone in a relationship, I think that you can kind of see how those feelings of love can be transferred to friendships as well. Because for the longest time, I had this hang up where like, I would not say I love you to so many people. Like, I could not say I love you to my parents, and I would not say I love you to my friends. It was truly reserved only for the person who I'm in a romantic relationship with. And kind of recently, especially because I have one friend who will always say goodbye by saying I love you, I've kind of gotten a little bit more flexible about saying this back. And it still is like something I have a bit of a weird hang up on, of like, do I love you? Like, I mean, of course I love my friends, but to say those words like I love you, that's almost kind of like loaded. Alright, so I think I've talked a little bit about what love means to me, so now let's think about the topic of unrequited love. So like, can you love someone if they don't love you back? And like, to me, in a romantic context, I've always thought no, like it's this, like love is an act of participation where both parties have to be involved to be in love. But at the same time, I think you can love someone who doesn't love you back. Like, in the case of a family member who could be kind of abusive, or they could be cold, or maybe they just have these problems that stop them from showing love to other people. Or they could just, like, be a mean person. So they're not really expressing love in the sense of, like, this nurturing, loving kindness. And yet, they could still have people in their life who, for whatever reason, are still expressing this loving kindness back to them. So it's kind of difficult to think of, like, imagining a situation of unrequited love, where someone is like giving this loving kindness to the other person, but they're not participating in that. And so then in a romantic context, I almost feel as if unrequited love is not actually possible, because if the other person is not participating, and like reciprocating those feelings, like it can't be this like evolving process in the same way. And like, if this one person who is like the subject of the unrequited love is not like opening up and allowing themselves to be the beloved in that situation, then I think the person who is trying to be the lover in that situation can't actually fully love them, because it requires this participation of like the opening up to love in order to be involved in a romantic loving situation. But even then, it's like, it's kind of difficult for me to differentiate like the concept of romantic love and then the concept of like loving kindness, where to me, like, the loving kindness is more of the spiritual sense of love, and like kind of this ever-present, relating to, the way God loves his children, the way a parent loves their children, the way, like a king or a ruler loves their people. Whereas like a romantic love relates more to these concept of courtship, and I think even like like financially, like the concepts of marriage are more tied up in that. So it's just interesting how we use the same word to refer to these concepts that are maybe a little bit connected yet also quite different. And then obviously something I've been reflecting on if you've watched my videos is just the concept of romantic love in general is just so difficult to pin down. And like if you really look at the historic basis of it, just like the idea that I mean, it's so closely connected to the arts. And like for me, the idea of romantic love and like being a muse is quite connected. And then especially I think like the unrequited love dynamic is like very common in muse-like relationships, where like typically the muse is being chased by usually several artists at once, and she doesn't open herself up to love in the same way as she would to like her husband. And then it's almost like that dynamic is what allows her to be a muse, because in some way like having access to her in like a reciprocal romantic sense dilutes that obsession that could drive a man to like or a woman, or like this is just like a stereotypical kind of like archetypal image that I have in my head of like the woman as beloved and the man as lover, of just like the obsession that drives someone to chase someone, this unrequited love dynamic that I find quite exciting. So I hope that this video was somewhat entertaining to you. That's all I want to do, is be an entertainer, and I really hope to get back to making YouTube videos again. Like I said, life was kind of crazy, you know, things were switching up for me, but I'm getting back on the wagon. And as always, if you have any video topic requests, please feel free to leave those in my anonymous question box or in the comments or through DM. And apologies if I haven't replied to your DMs. Like, honestly, I'm trying to cut down on social media a little bit, so I just don't have the time to be texting people as much as I want to. But I do promise I try and read as many as I can, and I just like appreciate that people are trying to engage with me, even if it's not always reciprocal. What can I say? I'm a muse, and I love being in unrequited love. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.